Eddie, I literally replaced the motherboard.
Well, yeah,
There's
that's
there's
pretty.
nothing
Ooh,
else.
echo.
In the process of doing everything.
Oh, wait, I'm out. Echo, ow.
You back, Eddie?
Oh shoot, I have too many windows open. Crap.
So many windows.
Ow, crap. I think the stream is working now. Ouch.
Uh, okay. Not sure what happened, everybody. Because apparently I was
Okay,
streaming
there we go.
before.
Good lord.
Yeah, apparently we were streaming to wherever before. And now I'm really in the middle of something, and fuck it, we're just gonna keep going.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
So, yeah. So,
Almost could be the model of everything we do here. The motto, not model. Goddamn.
MOBA.
Ooh. Okay. Looks neat.
Yep. Oh boy.
It's like robot cop polices.
More like weird
Cop.
space exploration, like exosuits, because they're like person-sized.
I look at them and I think Samus Year One. Nah, am I the one getting that vibe here?
Samus, as in Samus
Year
8.
One. Yeah. Making fun of Batman Year One.
Year 1, she would probably be in like the frickin' Zero suit.
You don't need to ruin my clip, David.
I'm gonna do it anyway.
Zero suit is not the Samus suit. Batman Year One's still wearing a Batman outfit.
But me being a Metroid fan, Samus did not get her power suit until the Chozo pretty much said you're able to use it properly.
So that would have been her first go of it. So, Year One. When it wasn't as upgraded. Because every game is about upgrading her armor, so.
After it gets like broken down as shit, because apparently Chozo engineers can't do in good engineering.
I'm just trying to say that it looks like a Samus Aran bounty hunter outfit, that's all. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, but
And you ruined it. I mean, look at him. The color scheme, the shoulder pads.
okay, so this is that type of game where it's like literally if somebody's target breaks down, I can't do that, so.
Somebody's target base.
Okay. Wow. Basically, the old style Final Fantasy thing where it's like everybody kind of has to attack their own target. Otherwise, stuff happens that basically causes one person to miss a turn.
I don't think I played enough of the original Final Fantasy to know that's the difference. I thought the first Final Fantasy were literally turn-based. So, you just do your thing. One at a time. Is that not the case?
It is turn-based, but like the very first Final Fantasy didn't have the, oh, this person's dead, which means I'll just move on to random target now. it was, oh, this person's dead, just skip my turn. Sweet. The only downside I'd say about this is the encounter rate is holy... no.
So, who are you playing as? Who are these characters?
Koji is the only guy that I actually got to name, but we're basically a crew from a spaceship that was trying to avoid space pirates, but now we're like... we did a warp jump, but... we basically didn't program in a warp point, so we got blasted somewhere, and now we're trying to basically get our get parts back in order to get back to Earth.
What kind of plot point is that? Hey, let's do this thing that apparently everybody could have easily have done. Go into warp out a warp point. And that's the plot of the game. I mean, like, wouldn't you think that there would be a failsafe for not doing that in your warp technology? Why would you allow it to warp without a warp point?
Because the fact that it's like Star Trek warp, meaning that literally you have to put in a warp point, otherwise it just goes until you tell it to stop.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, why would, if the rule is you need to have a warp point to warp, why would you allow your machine to warp without a warp point? I mean, like, say, I'm trying to think of, what's a good example here? I'm in no, my head hurts. I'm in no position to think of good metaphors today. But, I mean, I'm thinking about it in terms of programming. Like, there's an if statement missing somewhere.
Because generally it's a contrived plot point. I know that technically it's like, if no destination set, do not initiate.
Yeah. I mean, since it's an SNES game, I forgive it because I don't think we thought about it this far. We didn't have this kind of pop culture long enough that everyone can really think about it. I'm just trying to say that if somehow they put in a plot point where, like, maybe they had some sort of engineer or hacker, like, no, we need to override that now, have this thing where he overrides it, yeah, that would make sense now. Because otherwise, the adventure you're having right now of a ship that went warp without a warp point is not special because anyone could have done it. And you're asking us to believe that you are either the only one to do it, ever, to do this thing that everyone could have done at any time, or by some special circumstance you're the only one who did it, and not only did not, well, you're the only one who did it, and you're special for having done it.
The best I could probably say is that I'm not going to be forgiving it because it is a cliched type of thing.
Well, that's very... well, I guess it makes sense. Again, that makes perfect sense to me. Because it seems like, why would you even have this?
Because...
why is this a thing?
Admittedly, like me growing up in a Star Trek household is... there's overrides, and usually they put in the whole thing of override.
Yeah. That way we know that not everyone in the universe is insane, and that's why there are overrides. So only the pure insane can go forward with the adventure.
Yeah.
That leads to adventure.
But in this case,
sense.
technically this adventure
rules.
was kind of a misadventure because we're trying to get away from space pirates that had pretty much knocked out our engines and royally screwed us over.
Damn pirates.
And so it's like one of those things of, oh crap.
Have you ever seen the Ice Pirates?
Ice Pirates?
Yeah, it's like an old 60s movie.
I don't recall I have.
It's an amazing movie. I recommend looking it up and watching it. I have it, so you have my Plex. Watch it at your leisure. It's an amazing movie.
Well,
It's campy sci-fi at its best. It's gold for no good reason. No one is memorable. There's no one famous in it. Oh, maybe there is one famous person. Oh, yes, there is. Ron Perlman's in it.
Ron Perlman? Oh shit, yeah, I'm gonna watch that.
Ron Perlman's in it. I only found that out after partial viewing last week that he was in it. And I was like, holy shit, it's Ron Perlman. Check the credits. Yes, it's Ron Perlman. So, yes, I would recommend watching The Ice Pirates. It has one of the best time travel sequences that I've ever seen in a movie. The best, I would even wager to say. No competition. You know what? And actually, what they did, I don't even see it done that often. You'd think it'd be something people would rip off constantly, but it's a type of time manipulation I am not used to seeing. I don't want to ruin it for you, but just watch it later. You're good and ready.
Yeah.
It's better than Blade Runner, I bet. Such sacrilege, I'm sorry. You know, I don't think... Oh, I told you this before. I don't think I've seen the entirety of Blade Runner, so I can't even really comment. I've only seen bits and pieces of it, and everything about pop culture relating to it. I feel like it's gonna be one of those movies that when I finally see it, it's gonna make like, oh my god, this show, this reference, all makes sense now. Did that movie come out in the 90s? I want to see if I can blame my living in Italy on not watching it, because I never watched that movie.
Possibly. Oh god.
David, are you gone?
No, I'm still here. I'm just...
Oh, just ignoring me? Motherfucker.
Well, no, I'm just sitting here going like, this is going to be a fun fight.
Stream bonked out again.
God, is it
Or
just...
it's just you loading?
It's probably me.
No, it's back now. It bonked for a second there, but it's back.
Yeah, it's probably me. Because it's the network cutting out.
Yeah, are we gonna do streaming on Sunday? You're still down for coming over for that?
Yes.
Okay. Only slight thing. Well, no, actually, I think I can still end at the same time. I have to go to a symposium or the beginning of symposium that night. That's going to be the next couple days. Registration is at 3, but it closes at 7, so we can wait until after the stream to go register.
Yeah.
So no big deal.
I just wish this thing didn't have as many encounters, but that's the problem with good old Super Nintendo fights.
I don't know. I have trouble going back to most SE and SNES era RPGs. The only one that I'm willing to do at this point, well, the only two I'm willing to do at this point is Chrono Trigger and Legend of Seven Stars, and I haven't done any of those yet, but I will.
Legend of the Seven Stars.
Yeah, the Mario one.
The Super Mario RPG. I've always heard it's Super Mario RPG.
Yeah, I just didn't say that first part because I figured the second part would be recognizable enough. I apologize.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where it's like it has that subtitle, but everyone just refers to it as Super Mario RPG.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay.
Anyway, those are on my to-do list. That was my point.
Probably in very odd terms, I'd say that there's probably only one thing I could think of that has popped up that I would say be interesting to try out. But then again, I've been hearing mixed signals about it because of just it's from its fan base. A lot of people were not expecting a point-and-click adventure game. But after looking at the Kickstarter, the guy behind it pretty much said we're going to be developing a game that we could develop that would fit within the universe. Which what they were
What are you
trying
talking about?
Hive Swap.
What is that?
You remember the weird internet phenomenon known as Homestuck?
I feel like I heard of it. I have heard of it, but I can't remember what it is.
Basically, Homestuck is a kind of a huge cultural internet phenomenon. Mostly because of the fact that the guy behind Homestuck had done so much with it and just made everything just overtly convoluted. Oh boy, I need to get the fuck out of here. Because Sheriff is about to die. Yes, Sheriff is the... Oh god. Okay. Option. Rocket.
Rocket Man. I had that song stuck in my head.
Rocket Man.
Yeah. I read something in the news that Trump called Kim Rocket Man, and now it's been in my mind all day.
I did hear that as well.
And now the world's wondering whether we should nickname our dictators, which I'm not against. I think nicknames for villains are perfectly appropriate for any situation. What better way to belittle them? But the only problem is that isn't Rocket Man kind of a cool name?
Okay.
Would you like to be called Rocket Man, David? Should we start that trend?
That would be a weird thing to see.
Rocket Man!
Wow, this fight is just going on and on.
Started something in other words.
But yeah, I read about the whole Rocket Man thing too, and I'm like, okay.
Sort of not the worst thing he's ever done. And again, I don't mind giving nicknames to our evil dictators of the world. That's fine.
Yeah. Admittedly, with the way that the stream's been acting lately.
It hasn't bumped up yet again since I mentioned it, so I think we're running closer to being in the clear. Are you going to come over on Sunday?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to make jambalaya. It's going to be glorious. Just like last week. But it'll be glorious. And we'll defeat more souls of the darkness with their blood.
Yep.
I might have overdone on those challenge dungeons. I've been kind of kicking their ass.
It is what it is.
I mean, if this game is acting like it always does, whatever advantage I've gained will probably be gone within an hour or two. So, is this game, it says RPG, so this is just a long epic, or is this a more short brand game?
From the sounds of it, it's probably got a very long, asinine plot to it.
How'd you come across this? I don't think I've ever heard of this game before.
I just stumbled upon it one day because I was checking out, like, translated games and found this. Although, probably going to be stopping it soon. No offense, Eddie.
Stopping what?
The stream.
Oh, you're just not feeling it?
Just not feeling it, and admittedly, like, this game...
45 minutes of your stream kind of went kaput.
Especially since, like, half the stream is technically missing.
Into the ether.
Into the ether. Watch as I go back and find that,
Well, now's the perfect opportunity to shit talk people. Anyone want to shit talk?
I don't know of anybody.
That's good. That's probably healthy.
Admittedly, like, I have a couple of things I'd say about just general things in general, but
You don't want to make fun of the general. Generally speaking, he's not very nice.
No, he's not.
So you've never played this game before. You're literally playing it for the first time on stream.
Yep.
How are you
And
liking it so far?
I'm liking the designs, and I'm kind of okay with it, but
A good question, I think, is there a reason why you've never heard this game before? Like, is there a reason why it's probably gone in obscurity?
my guess is that the first game probably, because there is a sequel, and I did stumble upon that,
God, okay.
is that it
Game
probably
was good enough for-
did okay,
Well, is this one of those games that also was like maybe not well marketed and employed out here and it's just good in Japan?
My guess,
Who's the
since
publisher and developer?
uh Japanese developer, I
Okay, I guess not surprising.
yeah. So sad to say, people, it's going to be a short stream. Um, but as such, like there were a couple other things I was trying to get into and get up and running, especially since TGS is running. The only problem is that the one thing I kept running into as of lately was, like I was trying to get a emulator up and running for PlayStation, so I could do just play Brave Fencer Musashi, because the other options were play a Monster Hunter game, which, yeah, my PSP emulator's not working, and the PS2 version of the game is not sure what was going on with graphics and didn't have time to finagle around with it. And so it's like tried figuring something to get up and running, but it kind of failed. So,
That's right. Failure is an option.
and plus the fact that finding out Michael was kind of a, like, I've known for several weeks now. But Mackenzie.
Well, I mean, it didn't help that you've been out of commission for a few weeks, and then
Yeah,
this is the
grand
this is the
return.
restart, and it's like,
It's a meh stream. Mackenzie had to back out due to real life interfering.
well, real life will do that to you.
Real life as in being introduced to new roommate and all the fun jazz of that.
Oh, fun with that.
So yeah, and that's a completely different matter. But as such,
Is it a matter of time?
uh,
Trying to be cheeky. I'm sorry.
you are trying to be cheeky, sir. But
Sometimes it works.
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yes, Adam is now fully back up and running. I just still have to go back in there and tweak the RAM a bit. But other than that, and after looking at it, it looks like after getting my motherboard back from the manufacturer, things are actually working a lot better than they were beforehand.
Awesome. Speaking of warranties, I still need to call my PS4 controllers because I don't think I've gotten any fucking correspondence from them.
If they have not sent you if they have not sent you a box, this is something I don't like doing, but I would try and urge the factor that.
I have a case number and everything. I just keep forgetting to call.
Do you want me to just?
Today, but I got busy at work.
Do you want me to just bug you tomorrow and then bug you on Sunday to call them?
Well, that would be great, except that I wonder if they're even like operational on the weekend.
They probably are. Sad to say.
Well then, yeah, bug me tomorrow. Make sure I don't forget. Then I'll try to give them a call.
Okay. But yeah, if I had a lot more people, I'd be talking about TGS stuff because. Let's see.
Is it TGS season already?
TGS, Eddie, TGS has been going on this entire week.
I didn't know. I haven't seen a single post about it on the internet. How did I go a whole week without seeing about TGS?
That's because the fact that like most of the stuff that I've been seeing at TGS has been not like major things like.
I was gonna say there doesn't seem to be a lot of Kingdom Hearts news then because that would have been blown up my feed already.
Yeah, because like the only things coming from Square Enix from TGS has been Final Fantasy IX for PS4.
Okay, yeah, I saw that.
The major
a development thing.
No, it's out and you can buy it right now.
Yeah, so it's not a development thing.
Next,
I haven't played that. I have to try that out at some point.
The next thing that I know that they did was the major patch update for Final Fantasy 14, which
Do you know
my
if that Final Fantasy 9 release is cleaned up graphics or is it
it
all
is
in its
cleaned
glory?
it is cleaned up graphics. It's basically the Steam version of Final Fantasy 9, but for PS4.
Try that out then.
Um, the other thing is that Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, they were announcing characters that will be coming available to Infinite, one of which is the Monster Hunter.
Oh yeah, I saw your post on that.
Yeah. Uh, Another thing that came about was the release date for Monster Hunter World, which I'm going to be bugging a lot of people, even though I know for a fact I'm not going to be getting people to play Monster Hunter. As for other things, I've seen a couple of things from Nintendo, like Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon. They've now added a couple more mini games to it, as well as a photo mode. But
I want them to release a version for the Switch.
yeah, a lot of people are hoping Nintendo were going to be mentioning the Pokemon Switch game, which Game Freak has admitted they are working on a Pokemon game for the Switch. A mainstream Pokemon game. Not like Pokken or Coliseum. A mainstream Pokemon game.
I'd be down with that.
Uh, Admittedly, I'm saying they're going like, since Black and White broke the whole thing of, oh, gold and silver, crystal, diamond, pearl, platinum kind of thing. With Black and White, it was like Black and White 2. X and Y got. Uh, I don't think X and Y actually got something. They just got
Worldwide attention.
Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire thing. Or is it Alpha Ruby and Omega Sapphire? I forget.
I think they didn't want to mess with it because this is the game that pretty much brought everyone back into. Oh yeah, there's Pokemon games. We should do that more often.
Yeah,
Probably didn't want to mess with it too much.
yeah, and then Sun and Moon, it's like everyone's like, "Oh, don't do what Pokemon Black and White did because that's horrible." But they decided just Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and I'm like, I kind of would have liked uh, Dusk and Twilight as kind of like alternate names for Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Kind
Yeah,
of,
that's it could also easily be another main title.
yeah.
So if they don't want to squander the name. I wouldn't. That sounds like it's still good potential for a title down the line.
Down a potential. I mean, it's one of those odd things where it's like, for all I know, what the mainstream Pokemon game that they're going to be putting on the Switch is Twilight, which is essentially Pokemon Sun and Moon, but everything from Pokemon Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon
That would certainly work too.
in one game. I'm like, oh god, how is that going to work? Um,
Maybe it'd just be Pokemon Evening. Pokemon Eclipse. Ooh, Eclipse
Dusk.
would be good too.
Eclipse would be a good one for an alternate for Sun and Moon would be Eclipse. Um, but like I'd think of like Solar Eclipse for Pokemon Ultra Sun and Pokemon Lunar Eclipse for Moon.
No, they'd make it ambiguous. It'd just be Eclipse.
Yeah.
No
Uh,
need to get that cute.
but Nintendo's been fairly on the down low. Pokemon's the only thing that's really big coming out for it. Um, Capcom is really pushing Monster Hunter World, and I can see why because they're trying to make Monster Hunter
Yeah, they're
World.
really pushing that series more and more. It feels like.
They are because the fact that they're finding out that the fan base for Monster Hunter was a lot larger than they were expecting in the States, because Generations was extremely well received. I mean, me and our friend Jason have been uh, on and off playing together. Um, And my brother's been trying to bug me to play Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate with him because, A, since he doesn't have a copy of the cartridge, we've been playing with 3DS and Wii U. Also, Jason wishes you would play Monster Hunter Generations with us so we'd have 3 people and it'd make
I
missions
don't
go.
have a DS anymore.
I know. That's why he was complaining about stuff. But
Can't do it.
can't do it.
Honestly, I don't know if I'm ever gonna go back to a handheld. I tried with the 3DS, and not that I didn't like it, but it was another. I just don't play handhelds, and I have so much console and PC gaming that I just didn't have room in my life for another medium.
Yeah, for me, it's really weird because, like, my 3DS, while it does get use, there's not a lot of games coming out for it because most of the games that I see coming out for my 3DS are usually games that are not aimed towards me. Like Monster Hunter Stories, which is going to be coming out soon. Not Monster Hunter World, but Monster Hunter Stories. That one's much more aimed at young kids because it is a
Meddling kids.
like kids that are like 7 or 8 to about maybe 13, 15 at the max. Mostly because of the fact that Monster Hunter Worlds is a turn-based RPG versus Monster Hunter Stories is turn-based versus like Monster Hunter World or Worlds is an action RPG. And the only other thing that I've seen from TGS that got me really peaked was VanillaSoft actually showing off a game that they've pretty much has been in development since they finished off Dragon's Crown, which is Aegis 13. I'll have to find the photo of it, but it to explain, um, you remember Odin Sphere or Dragon's Crown, Eddie? Either
Eh,
of those?
a little bit. No, I don't. I didn't really play either one.
Yeah, but you know that the only other one that I could think of would be Muramasa, the Demon Blade. But you know about the fact that they literally pour their heart and soul into like the creation, their art style, and everything to make the game feel very, very
Yeah,
cinematic.
those are
Yeah,
they're really into their stuff.
yeah. Basically, Dragon's Crown, Muramasa, Grim Grimoire, and Odin Sphere, they're all fantasy. I've been like Aegis 13 has been one thing that I've been looking forward to because it's their first foray into a science fiction genre.
What were they doing before? I guess how would you classify what they were doing before?
Fantasy. Elves, orcs, goblins, dragons. Whereas Aegis
I guess I
13.
never considered Odin Sphere to be pure fantasy. I thought it was like magic tech at least.
No, Odin Sphere is pure magic
Okay,
because
then must either be misremembering it or misunderstood something.
you may have heard a lot of people talk about the highly complex mechanics of Odin Sphere, which is the game mechanics, but not the actual mechanics. The only thing that I could think of that would be close to it would be the whole, like, crazy giant huge magic cauldron thing, which that's more of a plot point than an actual game mechanic. But Odin Sphere takes place in a fantasy realm with, like, no shit Sherlock, Odin, fairy queens, goblins, orcs, dragons, the undead. Nothing really close to Magitech, because armies are still fought with bow and sword. Um, I will have to look up and find that photo for ages 13, because yes, it is a giant mecha series from the sounds of it, but the way they're trying to put it off is take Persona, but mix like take Persona's idea of everyday life, and then mix in the art style of Odin's Sphere or Dragon's Crown into it, and make the backstory similar to Ava without the whole, get in the robot Shinji moment. But those are all just kind of based off of small tidbits that have been coming out. Is the fact that most of the characters look fairly normal, except for maybe one or two. But yeah, I'm kind of dreading the re-release of Dragon's Crown for PS4. Kind of. Because the release with Dragon's Crown on PS3 was the whole, oh my god, the sorceress and Amazon are not realistic. And I'm like, did you take a look at the knight or the dwarf? They are literally made to be made of meat. Seriously, like.
I mean, realistic. What's our measuring stick here for realism?
The okay, the wizard and the archer, which is elf, tend to look fairly like you could see somebody actually dressing up as them, and no problems at a cosplay. The sorcerer.
Well, complaining that they couldn't cosplay as a character?
No, we were talking like, the best way to describe it is that the Amazon basically has essentially the ass of the gods that nobody else can have.
Oh, so unrealistic proportions. Okay.
Unrealistic proportions. But
that's fair.
The problem is that that was the point that I felt was a little miffed, was the fact that they didn't take into consideration that just about everybody had unrealistic proportions, except for maybe the wizard and the archer, because the archer, being a small petite elf, filled that weird Japanese niche of, oh, flat is justice and small is justice.
What?
The whole Lolita sect of anime viewers / statuette purchasers versus.
I don't think I understood the motivation here.
Talk to Jason. He'd be able to explain it better than I, because I'm not. I don't like trying to describe those camps because it's icky. But it's one of those like weird fetishes. Like, are you a boobs or a butt man kind of thing? Versus So it's like, do you prefer big boobs or do you prefer flat chests kind of thing? Or do you prefer big motherly women, or do you prefer small little sister type archetypes, which is just creepy. But no, the wizard is flowing robes, lanky, but he looks like a wizard would. Whereas the dwarf literally looks like, okay, let's have muscles upon muscles upon muscles upon muscles, including muscles in the beard kind of character.
You need to send me pictures.
I will definitely find you a picture of the entire cast of Dragon's Crown. I'd still love for us to play it as a Sunday stream, because it'd be all of us, like a lot of us could play, since it is multiplayer.
And by a lot of us, you mean two of us?
Up to 4 players. So if or when Mackenzie is in town, or at least our section of the state, she can join us if she wants to. Or we could also invite other people to play, like Justin.
Justin hates us now, though.
Why does he hate us?
I don't know. He never shows up anymore.
I'm
He
going
must
to
hate us.
I'm going to punch him in the face and see what's going on, because he said that Sunday would be better for him. So maybe it's just the fact that he doesn't know when to show up or what to expect. So other than that,
Mayhaps. Mayhaps.
perhaps. But a like just Vanillaware got a lot of flack from Dragon's Crown
Well,
because,
I guess I can understand that. That's a popular thing.
well, when Dragon's Crown came up, there was that whole thing with Gamersgate. So it was this weird, oh, this game came out and now we have to bash it because of unrealistic proportions. Like, uh, they're very stylized. Literally, Vanillaware takes pride in its heavily stylized artwork for every single one of its games.
The common criticism for that kind of stuff, though, is that sure that's all stylized, but it's a stylization that exists because of what I mean. You can pretty much call it the male gaze. That's why how it's I think it's put out there. So yeah, these aren't stylized, but they're stylized for the viewing pleasure of the male audience.
Yeah, but
That's
from
that's why the complaints.
from my perspective, Vanillaware has always stated, and this is based off of things that I've seen on statements, is that they don't really try to do this on purpose. They basically just they stylized all the characters so everybody could recognize where their character was on screen. Kind of like how Valve did with Team Fortress 2. A weird way of silhouetting a character so you don't get confused as to who you are.
Yeah, but you can see how people would see it as a flimsy excuse, especially because it doesn't outdo the fact that again, just be, actually because they didn't quote unquote notice it is more of a reason like hey that's because you're thinking of the male default. That's why you didn't notice.
Well, it's basically an argument that's dead and gone, because the game got released. People who bought it. People who didn't buy it didn't buy it. It's one of those things. But at the same time, I'd say that the argument for stylization, if you're arguing that point, means that we can't have stylized games, which means things like, um, let's see here. What would be a very, very stylized game that without it... Ah, easy. Overwatch. If Overwatch
How No
does...
More Heroes.
No More Heroes would be another one. Without those heavy stylizations, they would not be as interesting or as eye-catching. Because if Overwatch didn't have the stylization that it does, which it does, people would not be able to tell Hanzo from freaking Black Widow at a distance.
Widowmaker. You don't
Widowmaker,
even
sorry.
know.
I don't play. Screw it. All I know is that there's a gorilla, a giant mecha, and a small Korean girl in a mecha that everyone keeps telling her to be that eats Doritos and Mountain Dew. I only know the memes. I don't know the actual characters or backstory or whatever.
The game I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, but chesticles aren't a style. It's a response to male desire, and that's it.
But at the same time,
That's the quote unquote problem. And you know what? And even as I say this, it isn't like you can't have that in a game. The conversation's always been is that why does every game have it?
yeah, and
why does the majority of games have it?
well,
Why,
I'd say that Overwatch got a little bit of the argument that you're voting for, at least playing devil's advocate, in the fact that the whole the tracer pose,
yeah,
the freaking tracer pose that they somehow it became they replaced it with in some circles an even more risque pose than the one that was before.
Right. Well, a thing that would save that is there was historical precedent for it.
There was a
That was the
historical.
saving grace of that one.
Yeah, but I've also seen the argument that that historical precedent also was a highly sexualized thing that was painted on bombers, which is uh, essentially a heavy sexualization, male gaze, serviceman kind of thing, which to some
Well,
people,
that further feeds into the whole that we've been living with this for eons, and that's why people complain about it because
yeah,
it needs to change, and no one seems to want to go and change it. And then this intense conversation.
yeah, and that's why it's like we're kind of we're now basically switching positions on this. Is the fact that it's like at this point it's kind of there's it's really up to the developer on if they want to do it. And for
It's true.
me, my thing is if you don't like it, don't play it or don't pay attention to it. But
Yeah.
that's
And developers have the right to express their art however they want, but consumers have the right to express what they don't like about it too.
true.
And they can tell you easily what they think is wrong with it, and tell you with their dollars that they're not going to purchase games anymore for it.
Yeah. Uh,
And that's kind of how that's how capitalism works.
yeah. And the one thing that I've been seeing that a lot of people have been trying to refute, and this is one that's been happening since a while now, and this does not have to deal with the whole male gaze thing, is the fact that how much say does a consumer have in a company's product after it's purchased? Because this kind of leads back into the whole thing with Mass Effect 3 is that a lot of people were hoping to, instead of getting the choose your color coded ending thing, they were kind of hoping that the ending you would get would be based off of your game, like your choices throughout the game, whether it was from the first game, that led up to the third game, or just Mass Effect
Well, I
3.
mean, honestly, I think that was just bad marketing. That was oversold, way oversold.
That
Because
was a mix of
I think we
PR.
got the experience that we all were hoping for, and I don't think there was a problem with the game, other than the fact that I thought the only downfall of the game was that it was ambiguous in the end. That it's like, why did we need to be ambiguous? We just spent 3 games trying
Mhm.
to solve a universal mystery. Why do we have to have an ambiguous ending?
Yeah.
But
Um,
that didn't kill the vibe at all. It just was like, oh well, thanks.
it was a
Well,
horrible,
I
bad
guess.
taste in a lot of people's mouths. Um, and the one thing from my perspective is that I stood, I came to it later, but I came to the thing where it's like, you know, if they tried to basically account for every decision made in if you played the games from the first game all the way to the third game, that's a lot of information to try and take into account to adjust an ending for you.
Of course, but they all but promised it. That's the
And
problem.
and
They And
and,
even if they didn't outright promise it, there was plenty of time to understand that that's what everyone wanted, and there was willful um, overlooking of consumer desire versus what was capable, what the
yeah,
development was capable of.
and
It was
it's
willful one way or the other.
basically there was one side which was expecting it because of how the PR was like your choices will affect how things play out, which yeah, on a single game scale, that was a huge mechanic. But on an overarching game, they never really promised that because for the developers knew they could have the game could have bombed utterly on the first game. It didn't, but it could have bombed utterly on the first game and no sequels, nothing to plan forward to after that. Which from my perspective, the ending to Mass Effect 3 is by no means, when it was released, excusable. Because being
It's fine.
ambiguous as to what it was,
That
come
was backstory.
on, do some storytelling. At least tell people a little bit what's going on instead of what most people say you should do in a video game, which is show, don't tell. I'd have to
Well,
say that they should have told while showing, so people wouldn't be as weirded out or as just utterly pissed off, confused as they were.
yeah.
I mean,
Oh well.
it is what it is. But that's one aspect. Um, but from what I've heard, TGS they're the only thing most companies were focusing on was Capcom's Monster Hunter World because they've been hyping this thing up for at least a year and a half now. Because it's for the longest time, Monster Hunter has had this really, really steep learning curve. And unless you've played the games and actually got used to the gameplay, let's say that you decide to go out get yourself one of the new 2DS game handhelds, just to play Monster Hunter Generation with me and Jason, just on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
Since I've played Monster Hunter since Freedom Unite, which was a PSP game, and I had to adjust every time I got one of the games, I know the mechanics inside and out. Jason, who's played a little bit of some of the other Monster Hunters, has a much rougher understanding than me. If you just jumped in Monster Hunter Generations, it would be you would look at some of the new mechanics in Generations and go like, "What the is that? What does this do? How does this work? Where does this come into
Yeah.
play?" Because yes, the actual gameplay is fairly simplistic. Go out, beat the shit out of a giant, huge monster, and beat it to the point of where it is so tired you can bop it with a tranquilizer bomb, or beat it to death.
Tranquilizer bomb.
I'm not joking. The
I love that concept.
tranquilizer bomb. Um, or you could, in all cases, beat it to death to get parts to make better gear. Because Monster Hunter is a gear-based RPG. Kind of like how Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and Bloodborne is. Where, yes, your stats do play into a large aspect of it, but most of your weapon is based off of. Actually, no. Dark Souls is a bad example of that. Um, actually, Mass Effect would be a gear-based RPG because most of what I remember playing the first one is that levels only really pertain to proficiencies of your gear, and most of what the gear you have in the game
I
is
can
what.
neither confirm nor deny. I'm having trouble remembering. I think you're right. And there's a lot of modding too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that somebody's probably going to pop in or mention on the YouTube videos that it's like, oh, you're fucking wrong. You're wrong, sir. And I'm like, well, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm right, I don't care. Or if I'm wrong, I don't care
I
either
think the
way.
first one was more about that. I think that's the thing. I'm just kind
Yeah.
of remembering. The first one was very heavy gear based, and I think the other ones like simplified it.
Yeah.
And then the last one allowed for a little more variety without making it complicated. So it found a balance by the third one.
Yeah.
But the first one was definitely like, here's all the options. Honestly, if you ask me, number Mass Effect 1 is unplayable. I can't go back to that.
It's just like how you can't play Borderlands.
Yeah, maybe
Well,
even worse than that. Maybe worse than that. So I think I have tried to go back to Mass Effect, and I'm just like, what the fuck is this?
Why is my head hurting so? But yeah, it's one of those situations where Monster Hunter is entirely gear based, and you do have to pay attention to your gear in Monster Hunter.
Yeah, the
Um,
only problem with Borderlands 1 is that its interface is questionable. I think that was my only real problem with it.
a lot of
You get
interfaces,
that.
after looking back on them, tend to be questionable. I mean, I looked back to try to Brave Fencer Musashi on PlayStation 1, and I'm like, holy shit, is the UI cluttered in this? Because we have a charge bar, we have the health bar, the magic bar, the sleep icon, the like tiredness icon, the time, the date, the money, the ability you're using, and it's like it literally takes up like about an inch of the lower screen. And nowadays it's like I look at games like Dark Souls and go like, holy crap, they just put everything in one corner. Or like everything is just in two corners and you don't see very much of it. I mean, Bloodborne, everything's just in what, one corner? Maybe
Yeah.
partially in two because the souls in your inside are in the upper right hand corner, but they're just a tiny bit. They leave a giant huge vast expanse to you, and that's it. Versus other games where there's a lot of stuff going on. But that's game development, and we should probably stop this.
I was seeing how far you were going to go.
I feel like this could be a topic we could do, but it's one of those things I don't want to misinterpret people who may be watching.
We can get back into podcasting soon.
Yeah,
I think maybe by next month I'll be ready to do it again.
okay. I will definitely bug Justin to try and get a to come back for it, because god damn it, we need Justin. Um,
I
and
need you. I need you so bad.
as well as I'm gonna try and bug a
Actually,
couple
just
of
can't think
other.
of a song. I don't know what to think of actual song.
My mind is drawing a blank right now because I've been listening to a Final Fantasy 14 soundtrack right now, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so amazing.
Yeah, but they're not very heavy in the word department.
There's a couple of actual, I want to say, ones with some vocals, but they're kind of like, since this is an MMO, the vocals are more of a sub track than a main track. They're more of like in the background of it. There are some vocal tracks that are played with vocals up front, and they're like the final boss of that thing. Is holy shit, Answers is freaking powerful. But that's a thing we could discuss later. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of things. I'll have to look into a full list of what's happening at TGS. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are actually just holding off on reporting things because it seems like this year's TGS was less um, bravado and more of trying to be more pomp and circumstance. So a lot more
That's
formal.
that's like the opposite of why we go to them. That's kind of sad.
Well, I feel
Because I like watching TGS more than E3 just because E3 seems like there's a lot pomp and circumstance now.
well when I use bravado, I mean to me E3 is bravado, and TGS, since it's Japan's version of E3, um, they tend to be they try to actually show off things and be very formal about it, but from what I've heard, a lot of big companies, including the people running TGS, have been saying it's been getting too much hype, so they wanted to pull back and get it back to where it was like, hey, showing it basically kind of a much more, I want to say a mix between E3 and GDC. Showing off games and trying to show off a lot more of the mechanics and studios behind them. Instead of just, oh, hey, look at the latest Dragon Warrior. And I'm like, okay, yay, fine,
Yay,
cool.
Dragon Warriors.
Even though, like, Dragon Warrior is, like, the most, like, literally, Japan shuts down when a Dragon Warrior game comes out. Or I should say Dragon Quest game.
Oh, I thought you were just being generic.
No, Dragon Warrior was, like, the NES, like, alternate title because Dragon Quest was owned by TSR, the people behind Dungeons and Dragons at the time.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
I didn't
So,
know that.
so Nintendo changed Dragon Quest to Dragon Warrior for like for the NES games, and then Dragon Quest fell. The licensing fell away, and so now we actually have properly named Dragon Quest games. But yeah, like when Dragon Quest gets released in Japan, they like everything shuts down for like literally, including the Japanese government. It's like, oh hey, sorry,
Enemy's coming.
sorry,
Oh, Godzilla's attacking? It doesn't matter.
doesn't
We're
matter.
gonna stop now.
And then Godzilla stuff's like, Dragon Quest 11? And then they literally get a big screen and a Godzilla level controller for him so he can sit
And
down and play
everyone's
it.
happy. Everyone loves each other.
Yes,
The end.
literally, you never hear of something like that happening in the United States. Dragon Quest is on a whole nother level in Japan. So it's like, if you visit Japan during when a Dragon Quest is released, it's like, what is with all these people? They're all waiting in line for one thing. Although I actually no. I rescind my
You
previous
and
statement.
me and all of the people.
The only thing I could think of that would be relatively close, and it kind of makes me a little bit pukey, is the closest thing would be the release of an iPhone stateside.
Oh, that's kind of sad. I was going to say Star Wars, but no, you're right.
Yeah, sad to say, nerd culture does not have supremacy yet. Because Star Wars or Star Trek does not get. There's still people who are like, you still believe in that? Or you still watch that? And then we have people going like, oh, sweet, Fast and the Furious 9. I'm like, what?
All right, David, I'm going to get off because people are inviting me for some Overwatch. I'm going to get ready for that.
Well, in this case, we might as well just end it. So,
Okay.
well, in this case,
It's an unofficial podcast that we just did.
unofficial podcast, but hopefully we'll discuss some of these things on Sunday, maybe. But in this
We
case,
can go over TGS while I'm dying of whatever is trying to kill me.
yes. Well, in this case, join us Sunday for our normal Sunday Fun Day. Friday night streams is resuming, so be on the lookout.
Yay.
Next Friday, definitely going to try and plan something. And keep your eyes out on the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Twitches, and the Instagrams.
So long, everybody.
Night.